Good morning. It's 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. on the West Coast. I'm Christine Romans. Let's get you current. Breaking right now, a Senate committee votes to hold Dr. Anthony Fauci in contempt after he pleaded the fifth more than 100 times in a Capitol Hill hearing. Also breaking a new front in those devastating wildfires in Washington state. The National Guard now using helicopters to battle the flames. We're live in the fire zone. President Trump says the Strait of Hormuz could open as soon as today. The demands from Iran that could upend any deal. A new fast food chain linked to that salmonella outbreak. Now it's Qdoba. Our doctor is here with what you should look out for. And good to be with you this Thursday, August 6th. There's a lot to get to this morning. Let's begin this hour with breaking news on Capitol Hill. The Senate Homeland Security Committee just voted to hold Dr. Anthony Fauci in contempt of Congress. Fauci appeared before the committee led by Republican Rand Paul last week on the origins of COVID-19, and he refused to answer any questions, invoking the Fifth Amendment more than 100 times. Fauci argues Republicans were essentially trying to get him to incriminate himself, but those Republicans argue he had no reason to evade their questions because President Biden gave him a preemptive pardon before leaving office. Fauci's lawyer is reacting this morning, saying in part today's partisan committee vote is a crude political stunt intended to punish Dr. Fauci for exercising his constitutional rights. Joining us now, NBC News chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles. And Ryan, Republicans say Fauci had no legal right to invoke the Fifth. What do we hear from him this morning?
Well, we haven't heard much from Fauci. He's taken the Fifth Amendment at every step of this particular process, despite that preemptive pardon from the Biden administration. And that's really at the core of what is frustrating Republicans here. They argue that he's not cooperating with a congressional committee, which is his responsibility, not only as an American citizen, but as a former member of the administration. And that's really angered Rand Paul in particular, who's the chair of this committee. He's made it in many ways his personal mission to find some level of retribution for Fauci for the way he handled the COVID pandemic. And Rand Paul was very clear today. He believes that the Department of Justice should act on this contempt resolution. Listen to what he had to say.
We are voting on whether a witness who has received the benefit of a sweeping federal pardon can be ordered by this committee to answer questions and then defy that order without consequence.
But there are a lot of legal questions as to just how much weight this contempt of Congress act will have, especially because it will not be voted on by the entire Senate. And if it were to be voted on by the entire Senate, it likely would not get the 60 votes necessary to make it through the Senate. So at this point, it's nothing more than a strongly worded ask to the Department of Justice to act on some sort of criminal action related to Anthony Fauci. And at this point, the Department of Justice has not said specifically whether they intend to take that move. Christine.
So, Ryan, I guess where do we go from here then?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, you know, what's interesting about all of this is that the Department of Justice could take a criminal referral that was passed by an entire body of Congress and not act on it. They have to decide when they get that criminal referral whether or not there is enough evidence that if they were to take it to a jury, that a jury would convict the person who has been accused of criminal contempt of Congress. So it is an incredibly high bar. And there's been examples of the Department of Justice taking criminal referrals from an entire vote from an entire body of Congress, specifically the House of Representatives, and just deciding not to do anything with them. So in this case, we don't even have a full vote by the Senate. It's only a vote by the Senate committee. In the past, Senator Paul has sent over his own criminal referrals to the Department of Justice, begging them to do some sort of prosecution of Anthony Fauci, and they've decided not to do it. Even if they did take it up, Christine, then there's the whole secondary layer of whether or not he's protected under this preemptive pardon by the Biden administration. There are just so many layers to this. And in many ways, this just seems like a public relations exercise, another effort by hardcore conservatives who feel that both administrations, the Trump and the Biden administrations, bungled the response to the pandemic, went too far in their restrictions put on average everyday Americans, and they want to have someone held accountable. Who that person is, in this case, they think it's Anthony Fauci, but it's likely anything will come out of it.
Yeah, and then some Democrats this morning saying this is all meant to be a distraction from public health issues happening right now in this country, and this is sort of a Republican distraction. So, yeah, a lot going on there. Ryan Nobles, thank you so much, Ryan. Right, a bitter new political fight is already erupting over one of the most closely watched Senate races. President Trump unloaded on Michigan Democratic Senate candidate Abdul El-Sayed just hours after El-Sayed clinched the nomination. The president zeroing in on a race that could help determine control of the Senate. At an event in Las Vegas last night, he put his attacks in blunt terms.
Abdul El-Sayed, lovely gentleman. He's a man of hate. And now he's going around saying, no, I love everybody. He doesn't love everybody. When I watch Abdul, he's full of
NBC's chief White House correspondent Garrett Hake joins us now. Garrett, what are White House officials telling you about the strategy behind so quickly going after Abdul El-Sayed right out of the gate?
Well, Christine, the White House is letting the president lead the way. But when I talk to Republican strategists who are working on races all over the country, their view on this is they want to make every Democrat basically defend Abdul El-Sayed's positions. They want him to be on the ballot, essentially, in all 50 states. He's a progressive firebrand and a fighter who's popular on the left. But Republican strategists believe they can use him to essentially scare Republican voters off the couch and out to vote in an election where Donald Trump is not on the ballot. For his part, El-Sayed is welcoming this fight. Take a listen to how he sort of reflected Trump's attacks on him in an interview last night.
I'm glad he thinks I'm a lovely gentleman. A lot of people think so. First, look at the background. It says no tax on tips. The man can't stay on focus. That's like the one thing that he did to offer any economic relief. But instead of that, he's more focused on me and what I'm going to do while we're living through an affordability crisis that is generational.
So strategically, keeping the race focused on affordability is smart. And tactically, he points out what the White House kind of knows is a weakness. Some of their most popular items are no tax on tips, the so-called Trump accounts. That was what was written on the banner behind President Trump at that event last night. But the president himself has had a harder time staying focused on those issues, something El-Sayed and other Democrats will look to exploit going forward.
The president has said prices are coming down, gas prices are coming down, grocery prices are coming down, and a lot of Americans aren't feeling that. That's the right. Facts for them are a lot different. We're also learning more about that incident involving President Trump and Marine One and air traffic there in Washington. What more can you tell us about what happened?
Yeah, Christine, if you've flown in or out of Washington, D.C., you've probably experienced the ground stops that typically take place when the president is in the air. Normally, when the president flies, nobody else does. But that's not what happened on Tuesday, where you can see in this video you had an airliner, an American Airlines jet, taking off while Marine One was in the air. The two didn't pass close enough to be in sort of real danger, according to the FAA. The president's safety was never jeopardized here. But they talk about this as a momentary loss of separation, meaning somebody dropped the ball here. And given both the fact that the president is involved in this and that deadly crash that we had in Washington, D.C. Last January, this is going to get a lot of focus from investigators going forward to figure out what exactly happened in the airspace over Washington in this event.
All right, Garrett Hake at the White House. Thanks, Garrett. We are also following breaking news out of Washington this morning, where a new Washington state this morning, where a new fourth wildfire is sparking more evacuation orders. About 67,000 people have been displaced across the region, and officials warn that number could climb. More than 10,000 acres have been scorched now. Nearly 850 structures, many of them homes, have been lost. 1,500 firefighters from 24 states are working 16-hour shifts now, battling these flames. They're not likely to get a break anytime soon. Winds are expected to pick back up, and temperatures could reach into the upper 90s. Joining us now, NBC News national correspondent Morgan Chesky. Morgan, a fourth fire now. I'm sad to report another blaze here. How severe is this one compared to the first three?
It certainly doesn't hold a candle, Christine, to the damage that these first three have already done. Crews are remaining cautiously optimistic at this hour because we know that there are more than 1,100 firefighters on the ground, and they've already cut line around each of these main three wildfires, so they should have resources to devote to this fourth one. In the meantime, it really is a race to contain, Christine, for a couple key reasons here. The National Weather Service issued a warning saying that we could be hitting triple-digit temperatures in the next 48 hours, and then on Saturday, there could be be a return of some gusty winds. Those two factors combined, despite the progress that's been made, could pose a real issue for this ongoing firefight. Officials have made it clear from the outset that full containment could take weeks. But the good news to report is that as of yesterday, those three main fires only burned an additional 2 acres, a far cry from the more than 10,000 that they've already scorched. Christine.
Now, we know that there is a suspected arsonist for one of those blazes. Later today, this person is expected to be arraigned in court. What can we expect to come out of that hearing?
Aaron Fauci should be in a courtroom in a few hours to enter a formal plea on that count of first-degree arson for the Old Trails fire, the fire responsible for the devastation we're standing here in Spokane. One thing that could potentially be coming to light here are 2 encounters with authorities that Fauci had back in 2025 for responding to calls of fires, not once, but twice. Now, neither one of those calls resulted in an arrest or an arson charge, but that certainly could speak to a past issues that they've had with this individual that, again, I should mention, pleaded guilty to manslaughter back in 2010 for killing his own father in Arizona, serving time in prison before being released 6 years ago. So all eyes will definitely be on the courthouse as he is expected to enter a formal plea there, Christine.
All right, Morgan Chesky, thanks for your fine work there in Washington. Thank you. Turning now to the Middle East and a back and forth over the Strait of Hormuz, Iran and the U.S. signaling a deal to reopen this critical waterway is close, but we have yet to see what concessions will be made, what that deal looks like. Iran insists on maintaining some control, and that is a sticking point for the United States. Joining us now, NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons, who is live in the region. And Keir, 6 months ago, 130 tankers and ships a day passed through the strait. Oil prices were just $67 a barrel. Since the war, Iran has really taken control of the waterway. Oil prices have soared, putting a lot of pressure on Americans. It feels like Iran has some new leverage it clearly doesn't want to give up. Do we know what this deal could look like?
Yeah, look, I mean, oil prices have come down a lot, as you know well, Christine, and last time I checked, it's in the 70s, so it's not down to where it was prior to the war, but heading in that direction. I suspect if we do get an announcement, you'll see that shift again. You never know with the markets, but certainly millions of Americans are watching what happens in this stretch of water and whether there is a deal that can, in the end, ultimately make life easier at the pump. So here's where we are. The Iranian Foreign Ministry is saying that it has a agreement in principle with Oman, the other country on the other side of the Strait of Hormuz. It's reviewing it. That's what the Foreign Ministry says in Iran. And that deal will be about how those two countries would manage the strait. Of course, there is the controversial question of whether Iran could take money from vessels in order to pass through the strait. The Trump administration has been clear that it would be opposed to that. Iran says it's not negotiating with the US. It is in a sense, but not directly. But that being said, if there is a deal announced, and it hasn't been announced, and it's not done till it's done, if it is, I think it will be controversial for that reason, that before the war began, the Strait of Hormuz was kind of just a freeway. It was open, really. And now what I think you're going to have is some kind of a version of monitoring and management, albeit by Oman, obviously, which has a good relationship most of the time with the United States, and Iran, which clearly is an adversary. But it is a change. It's going to be a big change, and there'll be a lot of talk about that. That's if there's a deal. It's not done. And if, as I speak, things are falling apart, and they could be, then I think we'll be back to escalation by President Trump. And as you know, that can happen at any time with this president.
Yeah, and as we also know, oil tankers are under attack in the region, and there's a lot of pressure still on international shipping. I mentioned that 130 ships a day 6 months ago. It was maybe 20 or so a day earlier this week. How do we trust that it will be, safe passage if there's a deal?
Yeah. Well, I don't think you're going to be able to. I mean, I don't think if you look at your phone at some point today and you see newsflash, there's a deal, I just don't assume that that means that everything's done. It's not. I mean, President Trump himself says that the nuclear file, for example, will be in a second stage. The Iranians say they're not even negotiating with the US, and I think that there will then be crisis after crisis, frankly, over how the Strait is being managed. I think the Iranians will try to use overseeing the Strait as a point of leverage, not least remember that the Iranians don't even think that there should be a US military presence in this region, even though many of Iran's Arab neighbors have bases with US forces and do think they should be.
Yesterday, the Defense Department gathered top officials to quickly address a weapons shortfall. Explain what's happening there and, I guess, the president's frustrations.
Yeah, that's reporting by our colleague Courtney Kuby and others at NBC News that there were these frustrations and that President Trump was particularly angry. Overnight, he pushed back against that and said that there are enough munitions, effectively. I mean, the question here is about whether not just we talk about munitions. Much of it is also about interceptors, the ability to prevent drones and missiles from hitting targets here in Qatar and other parts of this region. Much of that's one of the issues, and the suggestion is that over the weekend, leaders of Iran's Arab neighbors communicated to President Trump that they were worried and that they didn't want him to escalate in the way that he was threatening.
All right, Keir Simmons, thank you so much, Keir. Much more ahead this hour, including the latest on 2 outbreaks of foodborne illnesses, both causing stomach problems and sickening hundreds. Our doctor joins us next. Plus, the latest on the explosive meeting between President Trump and his longtime ally, U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro. Our new reporting on how she fought to keep her job. And later this hour, the growing drought crisis in Europe, how historically hot summers are leaving lasting problems. We'll get you current after the break. New concerns this morning over yet another foodborne illness spreading across the country. The CDC is now tracking hundreds of salmonella cases and dozens of hospitalizations across 27 states now. Now, the surge is prompting a second popular Mexican-style food chain to pull jalapeno peppers from its restaurants. Joining us now, NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa. And Maggie, give us the latest here.
Yeah, Christine, it's a lot to track for people at home. The latest is kind of two-pronged. Number one, this latest outbreak, salmonella tied to jalapeno peppers. It's growing rapidly, as you point out. Those are new numbers and that new mapped graphic from the CDC. Number two, first it was Chipotle pulling the peppers from its stores. Now it's Qdoba following suit. So basically, for people at home, it just feels like this summer of food safety scares is only intensifying. This morning, new concerns about another foodborne illness outbreak hitting at least 27 states across the country. The CDC now tracking close to 350 cases of salmonella, including 36 hospitalizations.
Every time we look up, there's another recall.
Colorado and Minnesota accounting for more than 200 cases combined. This as the Mexican-style food chain Qdoba announces it proactively removed jalapeno peppers from all of its restaurants out of an abundance of caution. Qdoba following in rival Chipotle's footsteps, which announced the same move earlier this week after state health officials found more than 100 people sickened with salmonella in Minnesota, most of them after eating Chipotle. The chain writing, "The health and safety of our guests and employees is our highest priority." Overnight, the CDC tying cases to jalapenos grown in Sinaloa, Mexico, and distributed by California-based Coast Citrus Distributors. The CDC says the company has agreed to recall the hot green peppers. Food safety experts say finding a root cause will take time.
FDA will visit that location and they'll do their investigation to try to figure out exactly what caused it.
The salmonella surge is just the latest food scare in America, with health officials also tracking that cyclospora outbreak linked to tainted lettuce served at Taco Bell, with more than 10,000 confirmed infections and 2 deaths. Taco Bell has since removed the tainted lettuce. The damage rippling across the industry, with Salad and Go, a regional chain in Arizona and Nevada, filing for bankruptcy. In part, they say, because customers afraid of getting sick are avoiding lettuce.
And Maggie, it's not just lettuce or jalapenos. Now we've got millions of cartons of eggs that have been recalled over salmonella concerns. Bring us up to speed there.
Yeah, definitely. So let's add this to the list. Basically, the CDC is also tracking a recall of 1.5 million cartons of brown and white eggs. Specifically, it comes from Texas farms and distributed by Midwest Poultry Services. That's based in Indiana. They're looking at 98 cases, 26 hospitalizations across 17 states. Now, it's important to note, Christine, the CDC first flagged that outbreak late last month. They've been aware of that. It's not brand new. But here's the thing, and food experts will say a lot of people at home are paying way more attention now because of the intensity of these other two outbreaks. So they're just advising people to follow these recalls, follow suit, and with your produce, definitely just wash it thoroughly, always, outbreak or no outbreak. Christine.
Yeah, a good reminder there. Maggie Vespa, thank you so much. For more on what you need to know to stay healthy, I want to bring in NBC News medical reporter Dr. Akshay Syal. First it was lettuce, then jalapenos, now eggs. Big picture. Are we just a little bit more aware, or are there more outbreaks happening?
Well, that's the big question food safety experts are asking. And you saw in that TikTok and that piece by Maggie of the woman sort of going up. Every time I look up, there's a new food recall. I think people are really wondering, what's going on here? And I think there's two components, right? Whenever we find more of a disease, we wonder, are we just getting better, Christine, at finding that? Are our testing getting better? Are whole sort of genome sequencing at looking at parasites and pathogens getting better? Are we just getting better at picking things up? Or B, is there actually more disease in our food? And, in talking to food safety experts, it's not quite clear which one it is, whether it's A or B or frankly, a little bit of both. But the sort of common ground they all tell us, America has by far one of the safest food safety systems out there. People should not, at home be worried. They should just sort of pay attention to recalls, but they don't need to, sort of eliminate all things altogether.
Yeah, when there's a recall, it's because the system worked, because we know that something was unhealthy. If these two different, the Cyclospora and the Salmonella, what does recovery look like for these? I think the Cyclospora is really long and more dangerous, right?
It can be. And we have a graphic here sort of outlining what the two look like between recovering from Salmonella versus recovering from Cyclospora. So just to start, Salmonella is a bacteria. Cyclospora is a parasite infection. They both cause sort of foodborne illnesses, the diarrhea, the abdominal pain, those sorts of symptoms. Salmonella, you tend to sort of get hit fast. It can come on as soon as 6 hours after, and you tend to recover more quickly.
That's quote-unquote food poisoning.
Food poisoning, right. Correct. In about 4 to 7 days versus cyclosporiasis can take weeks to recover from. Salmonella doesn't always need an antibiotic. Most people can recover it on their own. Sometimes you do. Cyclosporiasis, we typically give something called Bactrim, which is an antibiotic that we commonly give for UTIs. But for both infections, Christine, people may have heard the brat diet. Have you heard of this?
No.
Bread, rice, avocado, toast. It's a sort of bland food diet. We tend to recommend that sometimes. It can be a little bit restrictive, but the goal is to just eat low-fiber, bland food until you get better.
Are there certain foods we should be just avoiding altogether? I'm afraid of raspberries, personally, but that's only because they're really hard to clean.
Well, they can be, with the brush, and they can get mushy. But I would say for most people, you don't need to stop eating fruits and vegetables. We don't want you to get deficient in vitamins and minerals, but follow those recalls and practice those food safety measures. I will echo exactly what Maggie Vespa just said. Keep outbreak or no outbreak, this is a good time to just practice those measures.
All right. So nice to see you, Dr. Akshay Syal.
Anytime.
All right. Senate Democrats are accusing the Trump administration of lying about what caused damage to the newly repainted Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. Now they're calling for a congressional investigation into the president's claims that the damage was caused by vandalism. That's after the stunning reversal this week by U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, whose office found the damage was caused by a flawed installation. Her job status uncertain right now. NBC's senior justice reporter Ryan Riley joins us now. Ryan, this story took a pretty dramatic turn after Jeanine Pirro reversed course here. What are some Senate Democrats looking for with this congressional investigation?
Yeah, they're really pressing the Interior Department for more information, because really what we've seen is this battle between, two members of the Trump administration over what really happened here. And I think on the one hand, you have what the Interior Department has represented, and then on the other hand, you have what the Justice Department has presented in court. And they've basically admitted that this was a case that never should have been brought in the first place, that the evidence didn't sustain this notion that this Olympic canoeist had caused damage because there was already all this pre-existing damages. was damaged. They called it a rush job, a botched job, and they looked through all of these Interior Department documents that laid that out. And so it seems as though you have the Interior Department trying to back this story that the president has told about these vandals going after the pool, when in reality, the documents that the Justice Department examined from the Interior Department itself showed that this was not a well done job. In fact, one of the most notable things I thought in that filing was that they said that one of the National Park Service's own engineers was actually an individual who took a knife to the tarp there because it was already peeling off. So they thought it was the best way to sort of prevent further damage by actually cutting some of that material that you see sort of flapping around there from even before the Olympic canoeist showed up to the pool.
Now, the president is very unhappy with Piro's decision. He has been very clear about that. It's been a few days since that Oval Office meeting, and the president said just, 24 hours ago, he hasn't made a determination yet on whether her job is on the line. Do we know if she's going to keep her job?
The relationship that they have really does go back decades, and so it would be this really monumental moment if he were to sort of relieve her of her duties. She was someone who came into this position because there was another candidate, Ed Martin, who was the head of this the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, who was not without enough support from Republicans in the Senate because of his support for J6ers, and so that relationship it would be quite remarkable if he were to force her out here.
Yeah, to be a fly on the wall of that meeting where they were both talking about this. Wow, what a moment. All right, Ryan Riley, thank you so much. All right, from a drone armed with explosives in Germany to an Oscar winner meeting the Pope, let's get you globally current on the other headlines we're following today. A security scare at a German airport where an employee spotted a drone flying with explosives. An anti-explosives robot was deployed to examine the drone. Police were able to remove the detonator. The airport's 2 runways were shut down and a passenger flight had to be diverted. Germany's interior minister called the incident a, quote, new quality of danger. Overnight, Ukraine's President Zelensky announced the country's defense forces struck 2 major oil refineries in Russia. A huge plume of smoke was seen rising from the refinery. Emergency crews are working to put out that fire. Ukraine also struck 2 Russian vessels in the Black Sea in response to Russia's attacks on shipping. And star power at the Vatican. Actor Matthew McConaughey met Pope Leo during his weekly general audience at St. Peter's Basilica. The Oscar winner and his wife shook hands and briefly chatted with the first American pontiff. McConaughey is in Italy this summer filming a new movie. Right, coming up, why some Republican lawmakers are angry about the White House's delay of a ban on hemp products, how the family of President Trump's chief of staff could stand to benefit. But first, the urgent situation in Puerto Rico, Americans rationing water because of drought conditions, the major cities impacted on the U.S. territory. More current right after this. From the hefty reward for a cartel leader to drought gripping Puerto Rico, let's get you current on the other headlines we're following today. The U.S. is offering a $25 million reward for anyone who can help capture the leader of a Mexican cartel. The man in question, Juan Carlos Gonzalez, is a U.S. citizen who heads Mexico's most powerful cartel. The reward is part of the Trump administration's moves to put pressure on the cartels and on Mexico. In total, the government has offered $100 million in rewards for various members of the Jalisco New Generation cartel. Nearly 200,000 Puerto Ricans will go without water for 48 hours at a time as the country struggles with intense drought. Puerto Rico will start rationing water tomorrow on an alternating schedule. July was the driest month there in more than 120 years, with no relief in sight. Experts predict the dry conditions to last until at least September. The FDA approved the first mRNA flu shot in the U.S. It's made by Moderna, and a late-stage trial found it's around 27% more effective than the standard flu vaccine. Moderna says the agency greenlit the vaccine for adults age 50 and older. The company expects the shot to be available for this fall's flu season. In a sudden reversal, the White House is now pushing to delay a ban on intoxicating hemp. The products are usually marketed as vapes, gummies, or drinks. They're really easy to get, usually sold at gas stations or convenience stores, easy access to children, and most are unregulated. The products give users a marijuana-like high without being considered marijuana. Last year, President Trump signed a provision that would criminalize and ban most of these hemp products. Now, this was set to take effect this fall, but now this reversal is now being pushed back by 3 weeks. Joining us now, NBC News legal affairs reporter Gary Grumbach. Gary, what's behind the reversal?
So we don't know for sure, but what we do know is that the reversal would really benefit a guy by the name of Brett Worley. He is the president and CEO of a big hemp farm company called McNutraceuticals. Sorry. He also happens to be the son-in-law of White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. And Susie Wiles plays a crucial role in the White House. She's fond of saying she can't control the president, but she can control pretty much everything else at the White House, and this falls into that everything else category. Now, how much this 3-week delay, which is what is expected to be, would really benefit these pharmaceutical companies and these hemp companies, it really remains to be seen. But members of Congress are not thrilled about it, Christine.
And what are we hearing from lawmakers who are frustrated by this push, this delay from the White House?
Yes, so they're just as confused as we are about all of this. One of the main White House staffers that's been pushing members of Congress to approve this delay has been really meeting with members of the Senate Republicans at a lunch this week. And the members of the Senate are going to their leadership. Members of the House are going to their leadership to complain about all of this. Now, we've reached out to Leader John Thune and Speaker Mike Johnson about all of this. They have not responded to our request for comment here at NBC News.
The fight has become a sticking point in negotiations now to keep the government funded. Now, how did that happen, and where do these talks go from here?
Yeah, so often here in Washington, when you have a piece of controversial legislation or something that's controversial and something that's real easy to get through, you combine the two to sort of soften the blow of that controversial legislation. That's exactly what is happening here, because the government, as it does so often, it needs to get funded by the end of this year. And so they're combining this delay with the government funding short-term spending gap bill to try to get both across the line here. Whether that's going to happen, we'll see. The Senate has a vote this week to try to push this until the end of December. Christine.
All right, Gary Grumbach, keep us posted. Thank you. Happening right now on the International Space Station, NASA astronauts are about 2 hours into a roughly 6.5-hour-long spacewalk. These are live pictures right here. This mission will help set the stage for some upgrades to the station and its power system. Let's listen to these astronauts in action.
I am immediately on the forward side. I have the strut bag on my left and the cable bag on my right. The cable bag is out of your way, I think, but it's just kind of underneath the hatch. You can see it.
I can see it.
But if you come out and then go straight aft, we should be in a good position.
I'll do that.
Okay, these are the people inside those spacesuits. Jessica Meyer, a NASA astronaut since 2013, and Anil Menon, who became a NASA astronaut in 2021. Joining us now, NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello and former NASA astronaut Drew Feustel. Tom, okay, so cool. Talk to us about the mission and what these astronauts are doing during this spacewalk.
Well, first of all, these are two of my favorites. I've known Jessica since she was an astronaut candidate. And in fact, I was standing with her poolside in Houston some 13 years ago when she was training to learn how to do a spacewalk. She'd never been in space before. Now she is the commander of the space station, and this is her 6th spacewalk. She's the one wearing the red stripes. And then her crew member there, Anil Menon, is married to astronaut Anna Menon from the Polaris Dawn mission. We've met her many times before. So these two are real rock stars in the astronaut corps. They're 216 miles above the Earth right now, and you laid it out right. This is a bit of housekeeping, if you will, preparing essentially because they need to eventually roll out a rollout solar array, and that is to be installed later this year, getting ready to eventually deorbit the space station. In other words, decommission the space station. It's all part of that. But, you know, as we watch the spacewalk, I'm often reminded about the fact that sometimes it's stuff that you don't even expect could pose an immediate threat. Remember, back in 2013, we had an astronaut nearly drowned in space, nearly drowned. And that was Luca Parmitano. What happened was there was a clogged filter, and therefore he started getting liquid water building up in his helmet. He went blind. He couldn't see. He felt his way back to get inside, and it nearly. I met him, and he talked to me about it later. He said, "I nearly died up there, and who would have thought I would have almost drowned in space?" So sometimes it's stuff you never expect could happen, and they are always on guard when they're on this kind of a high stakes spacewalk. It'll go until about 2:30 p.m. Eastern time.
Drew, you have done, 9 spacewalks in your career? So give us a little sense of what it's like to be up there. I mean, I'm sure there are real professionals doing this work, but my goodness, you're walking in space.
Well, I hope you can see the smile on my face. This was an amazing time for Anil and Jessica. I know them both well. Tom obviously has met them many times before, and hello to you both. Thanks for having me on the show. It's great to see them out there doing their work. Jessica has done one of these spacewalks before in preparation for the IROSA upgrade, which is the solar panel upgrades. As the old ones sort of degrade, we need to get out some new ones to make sure the power systems on ISS continue to work. But there's no better view than that you get from inside of a spacesuit, and it's a real privilege to be able to go outside. It is risky. I know it carries some risk, but also, NASA and, over the years that we've had preparing and executing these spacewalks, we have a pretty good understanding of what that risk is. So precautions are in place, the systems are in place to protect the astronauts. And as you said, these are professionals out doing their job. But I can tell you, looking down beneath your feet, seeing the Earth a couple hundred miles away is pretty incredible, and just there's no view like it.
It's like pinch me moments, but you can't pinch the suit. You just got to be doing the work you're doing. Drew, I also wanted to ask you about SpaceX. NASA says a SpaceX rocket crashed into the moon yesterday. Now, we didn't see it. There's no visual of that crash that we're aware of. What is your sense of that? Are you concerned at all by that?
Not really. I mean, we're kind of pushing the limits of where we can place objects in orbit. And in this case, SpaceX delivered a few landers out to the moon, and that's a pretty high drop-off point for them, consuming most of the fuel or all of the fuel that they had on that vehicle to make sure that the spacecraft were going to be where they needed to be to land on the moon. And eventually, with sort of the solar wind, solar drag, and gravitational forces, that second stage, the upper stage of the rocket, got pulled into the lunar orbit and has, made impact yesterday. So it's not entirely a surprise that we know orbital mechanics well. These things can happen. The space program has historically done what they could to deorbit vehicles in a planned way with known trajectories, but occasionally, in this case, they knew what their risks were, and they knew that eventually that spacecraft might end up on the moon. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of infrastructure there that can be damaged yet at this time.
All right. Well, this thing is going to keep going for some time, so we'll keep dipping in. Tom Costello and Drew Feustel, thanks, guys. Really great conversation and cool stuff happening there. Up next, the major legal defeat for Alec Murdaugh as he tries to prove his innocence after his murder convictions were overturned. Plus, another big legal case we're following, the mother on trial, the emotional testimony from the family nanny about what Lindsay Clancy was like as a mom. We'll get you current right after this. A new twist in the seemingly never-ending Alec Murdaugh legal saga. A federal judge is throwing out a case filed by Murdaugh against former court clerk Becky Hill. Murdaugh was seeking $600,000 in legal fees from Hill after it was discovered she had improperly influenced the jury. Her comments ultimately led to Murdaugh's double murder conviction and life sentence being thrown out. Murdaugh is accused of murdering his wife and youngest son. And joining us now, NBC News national correspondent Aaron Gilchrist. Aaron, Murdaugh's attorneys appealed this ruling late last night. How is the judge explaining his decision?
Well, basically, Christine, he's saying that the money that Alec Murdaugh spent on his first trial had nothing to do with the statements that were made by Becky Hill. And I want to show you a key part of what the judge wrote in dismissing this lawsuit from Alec Murdaugh. He wrote, plaintiff's claim contains a fatal flaw, the lack of a causal connection between the funds expended for his defense in the first trial and the defendant's misconduct. Defendant had no role in the initiation of criminal charges against plaintiff. Effectively, what we're getting here is Alec Murdaugh filed this lawsuit against Becky Hill back in May, saying that the comments that she made that prejudiced the jury in his first trial were part of the reason that the trial existed. And the judge here effectively saying, no, that's not the case. The $600,000 that you took out of your retirement fund and spent on that first trial is your responsibility. Becky Hill had nothing to do with that. We know that she initially had been accused of influencing the jury here, and in dismissing the charges against Alex Murdaugh, or I should say, throwing out the conviction of Alec Murdaugh, the Supreme Court in South Carolina said that she placed her thumb on the scales of justice when she spoke to the jury in that trial, and that's why he's getting a new trial, Christine.
Murdaugh is still in prison right now after pleading guilty to stealing from his clients, and now he's facing a retrial for those killings, the killings of his wife and son. So what happens next?
Yeah, the judge in this new trial has said that she wants to see things move at a good clip. She made no bones about that in telling the lawyers in this case that she's setting April 5th of next year as the trial date. And next week, as a matter of fact, there's a status hearing where she wants the lawyers to make sure they file whatever motions they need to file ahead of that time so that they can make sure they're moving forward with finding a location for the new case. There is one outstanding question about DNA that was found under Alec Murdaugh's wife's fingernail. The defense wants to have that DNA retested, and there's some real back and forth between the defense and the prosecution about retesting that. We'll be looking to hear more about that next week, Christine.
All right. Thanks so much, Aaron Gilchrist. We're also following the murder trial of Lindsay Clancy in Massachusetts. The family's former nanny took the stand yesterday, sharing what kind of mother Clancy was to her children.
I observed a wonderful mom who loved her kids, she was very concerned with their safety. She was very concerned with Callan's eating and sleeping. She was a wonderful mother.
She went on to recount how Clancy lost significant weight, could not sleep, and complained of post-pregnancy mental health issues in the months up to the killings. If convicted, the 35-year-old mother faces life in prison without parole. Her defense argues she should be committed to a state mental health facility. Joining us now, NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris. It was actually the prosecution who brought on the nanny to the stand. It was hard to listen to, kind of going back in time, what it was like in this family with this nanny and these three little children. Do you think it ultimately helped or hurt her case, the nanny testimony?
Well, I think for the defense, they got a lot of points on cross-examination because, remember, the defense is focused on mental health issues, over medication that caused Lindsay Clancy to kill her children. And what we hear from the nanny is that she's a wonderful mother. She's a doting mother. And so this really fits into the defense narrative that it was the mental health issues that broke her. She was in psychosis, not something else. So that really fits in to that defense narrative. So I think from the perspective of who that witness benefited, it was definitely the defense.
The nanny was also recounting, a tussle between two of the kids and how Lindsay Clancy stepped in and removed one of the boys from the situation, and almost like humanizing her, like as any parent would try to manage three small children. We also heard from a toxicology expert, and it got a bit heated during testimony. What happened there?
So the toxicology expert testified that there were 6 antipsychotic and psychiatric medications in Lindsay Clancy's blood after the killings, which she was hospitalized. So that was really, really significant. One of those being Senequal. Again, the defense has said that once she took Senequal, this was in November of 2022, that's when her mental health really began to deteriorate. And there was double the dosage in her blood at the time. So this was really important testimony with regard to toxicology. We also heard from a DNA expert. And during the DNA expert's testimony, the defense was jumping up, objecting, going at it with the prosecution, saying this is all gobbledygook. Because remember, they entered into these stipulations of fact. And so the defense said, we already agreed upon certain things that are going to be presented to the jury as fact. And prosecutors, you're digging in on this on the stand. So this has been a common theme in this trial, the defense raising a lot of objections as the case unfolds.
So today on the stand, they're expected to call the medical examiner, right? What do we expect from that?
It is going to be heart-wrenching, the most difficult testimony of the trial. It's going to speak about the means and manner of the death of the children. So this is going to be a tough day for the jury.
All right. Thank you so much, Misty Maris. Thank you for that. All right, coming up, breaking news out of Asia, what we know about the missile North Korea just launched. And coming up next hour, the shocking medical mix-up that caused a woman to have her uterus removed when she didn't need to. The lawsuit she's now filing. We have more current right after this. And we're following breaking news out of North Korea. The country launched what's believed to be a short-range ballistic missile toward the Sea of Japan today. That's according to South Korea's military. The weapons test taking place just days before the U.S. and South Korea begin their annual military drills. The launch was North Korea's first since late June. Joining us now, NBC News correspondent, international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer. Janice, what else do we know about this test?
Well, Christine, South Korea's military described it as a short-range missile test launched toward the Sea of Japan from the Wonsan area on North Korea's east coast, which is a frequent site and is home to missile production and naval facilities. Now, officials haven't identified the missile type yet, but South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. are all looking at the trajectories in order to know more about it. State media in North Korea usually publishes photos or videos within a couple of days of each launch, and that gives analysts the best look at whether any new capability is being tested here. This has become key as North Korea has deepened its military ties with Russia. They've been providing troops for the war in Ukraine in exchange for technical help in order to advance its weapons program. Christine?
What do you make of the timing here? This test is coming right before there's some military exercises.
Yeah, it's no coincidence on the timing. The U.S. and South Korea are about to start annual joint exercises, and that appears to be the key message from Pyongyang. It routinely denounces these military exercises to show its opposition, and this sort of launch falls into a broader pattern that has been set over the past year as Kim Jong-un has built up and has wanted to show off North Korea's missile program. The last launch, as you mentioned, was in June. Also, earlier this week, Kim Yo-jong, the powerful sister of Kim Jong-un, warned that North Korea would respond to what it called growing U.S. and South Korean military pressure. And it also rejected any return to negotiations over the regime's nuclear program. She also publicly criticized Japan for building up its military after Japan's first ever live test of a U.S.-made Tomahawk cruise missile. So if we look at it in that context, this is a launch that's probably less of a test of capability and more a show of force that's also carrying a lot of political rhetoric from North Korea. Christine?
Yeah, a big message. All right. Janice Mackey-Frayer, thank you so much. Wildfires, heat waves, now dangerously low river levels. All in all, Europe has experienced a brutal summer. And now Europe's second largest river, the Danube, that runs through 10 countries, is at dangerously low levels, and power plants are on the brink of shutting down. In Romania, they blew up this rock outcrop to reroute vital cooling water to its sole working nuclear reactor. And in Budapest, low water levels led to this interesting discovery. Remains of what is believed to be an ancient mammoth were found. Joining us now, NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez. Raf, these rivers that are drying up are critical water supplies in Europe. What's the latest from where you are in London?
Yeah, Christine, so we're in the west of London right now. We're standing on the banks of the usually mighty River Thames, which runs all the way through the British capital. But if I get out of the way here, you may be able to see just how low it is right now. The bank on this side of the river, totally exposed. You can see the mud, the birds walking around on it. You can really smell that mud. Now, the Thames is a tidal river. This is low tide, so the water levels will be a little higher later on in the day. But this is a result of the lack of rain and the baking heat that they've experienced here in the UK. And this is a similar picture that we are seeing all across Europe right now. In Italy, every single major city from Rome to Milan is under an intense heat warning, and it is having a significant impact on rivers all across the continent. Christine.
The Danube is running dangerously low. What would happen if plants have to shut down? I mean, are we talking about electricity rations, or are there backup plans for these countries?
Yeah, so you already have the governments in both Romania and Hungary appealing to people to scale back on their electricity use to make sure that they don't overwhelm the grid. And the reason the water is so critical to the power supply is that nuclear power plays a big role in producing electricity in these countries. They need the water from the Danube to cool those nuclear reactors. And right now, there is real concern about getting the amount of water they need for that important safety function. So in Romania, Romania, Christine, they've been moving to really extreme measures in some cases. The Romanian Navy actually blasting through chunks of rock, trying to create a more direct route for the water as it heads towards that nuclear power plant. In another part of the river, they've sunk a bunch of big barges, these old ships that they've filled with rocks, and they're kind of trying to create a sort of artificial path for the water in that case. So far, it seems to be working. There haven't been major power outages, but this is a close-run thing, and it shows you just how directly this intense heat is affecting power production. Christine?
Oh, yeah, that's desperate measures, trying to create a different channel so that you at least have the depth. You think about, cruise ships and recreation, but these are really important, heating and cooling and nuclear power. Okay, but we just told viewers about this ancient mammoth that was found. Are they making other interesting discoveries as these river levels are dropping?
Yeah, there's some unbelievable history that's emerging here. So you have this Ice Age woolly mammoth, and then in Serbia, they found a couple of dozen of these World War II era warships. The Nazis sunk them back in 1944. They've been sunk into the mud of the riverbed, but now that the river is so low, you're getting a glimpse of them for the first time. Christine?
All right, Raph Sanchez, thank you so much, Raph. There's much more news ahead. The next hour of Current starts right now. 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. on the West Coast. I'm Christine Roman. Let's get you current. Campaign clash. President Trump is taking aim at Michigan's new Democratic Senate nominee, Abdul El-Sayed. The escalating political fight as the general election takes shape. Held in contempt, Senate Republicans vote to penalize Dr. Anthony Fauci for refusing to answer questions during a hearing on Capitol Hill. What happens next? Straight stakes. New reports indicate a deal on the Strait of Hormuz could happen as soon as today. We have the latest on the high-stakes talks. And wildfire battle. A fourth fire sparks, creating yet another front line in Washington state. Plus, the arson suspect is back in court. And good to be with you this Thursday, August 6th. We got a lot of news to get to this morning. Let's begin this hour with a rapidly escalating political fight in one of the country's most closely watched Senate races. Just hours after Michigan Democrat Abdul El-Sayed won his party's nomination, President Trump put the race squarely in the national spotlight with a series of sharp attacks at a rally in Las Vegas last night.
Abdul El-Sayed, lovely gentleman. He's a man of hate. And now he's going around saying, no, I love everybody. He doesn't love everybody. When I watch Abdul, he's full of
The Michigan race could be pivotal in determining which party controls the Senate, making it one of the highest profile contests of the upcoming 2026 midterms. NBC's chief White House correspondent Garrett Hake joins us now. Garrett, President Trump, he wasted no time following El-Sayed's primary win. What are White House officials saying about how they and Republicans more broadly view this contest?
Well, Christine, President Trump loves to have a political foil, and now he has a new one in Abdul El-Sayed, an outspoken progressive who President Trump wants to try to essentially tag to the rest of the Democratic Party, suggesting that they all have the same positions and the same style. For his part, El-Sayed seems to relish this fight as well and is using the president's focus on him to make an argument that the president is distracted from the things that Americans themselves actually care about going into the midterms. Here's how El-Sayed pushed back on the president last night.
I'm glad he thinks I'm a lovely gentleman. A lot of people think so. First, look at the background. It says no tax on tips. The man can't stay on focus. That's like the one thing that he did to offer any economic relief. But instead of that, he's more focused on me and what I'm going to do while we're living through an affordability crisis that is generational.
Christine, Michigan is absolutely central for Democrats if they have any hope of retaking the Senate. Republicans have a nominee there who was on the ballot last time and who underperformed Donald Trump by like 120,000 votes. They're going to need to really attack Abdul El-Sayed. Negative partisanship is the name of the game here in Michigan, and nobody's more comfortable in that space than President Trump.
Hey, Garrett, how involved do White House officials expect the president to be in this particular race going forward? Do they see him as the kind of candidate that Trump thinks he can really rally his supporters against?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it the right way. Rally his supporters against. I mean, there's only so much that Trump can do to help Mike Rogers directly. Rogers campaigned with Trump at every stop in 2024. But Abdul El-Sayed is not Alyssa Slotkin, the Democrat who won that other seat there. He is a progressive. He's in favor of things like Medicare for all. He's been pretty outspoken opposing aid to Israel. Those are policy positions that the president and his advisors think they can get Republicans excited to vote against, basically, and to move them from the couch to the voting booth. We'll see how successful they are in the next 2 months.
Yeah, and affordability will be so key. It'll be fascinating to see how those two candidates position themselves in the affordability debate. Garrett Haake, thank you so much, Garrett. Turning to breaking news on Capitol Hill now, Republicans on the Senate Homeland Security Committee have voted to hold Dr. Anthony Fauci in contempt of Congress. Lawmakers, including Chairman Rand Paul, say Fauci should not have been allowed to refuse their questions during last week's hearing on the origins of COVID-19. Democrats call it a sham.
Holding a witness in contempt is a serious thing, and it should be rare. But the contempt power exists for precisely this circumstance.
Criminal contempt is punitive. It does not compel a witness to answer questions or produce the documents we'd all like to see. What it will do is create a damaging precedent that future witnesses will use to resist legitimate congressional oversight and weaken this committee's ability to compel testimony.
Fauci says he was advised by his lawyer to invoke the Fifth Amendment during that hearing, claiming Republicans wanted him to incriminate himself. But Republicans say he had no reason to worry because former President Biden gave Fauci a preemptive pardon. Joining us now, NBC News chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles. Ryan, big legal dispute on whether Fauci was allowed to plead the Fifth during his hearing. What happens to Fauci now?
Well, really nothing, Christine. This is still a very long process, and it's really unclear whether or not this committee vote has any additional weight than the series of criminal referrals that Rand Paul, the chair of the committee, has already sent to the Department of Justice. There's almost no chance that it will be voted on by the entire Senate because it would never get the 60 votes needed to pass. So it's really now in the hands of the Department of Justice to move forward with this specific contempt of Congress charge that has been leveled against Anthony Fauci. And Rand Paul specifically said he believes that Fauci needs to be held accountable on some level. Listen to what he said today.
As far as pleading the Fifth when you have a pardon, all you have to do is tell the truth, just not commit a new crime. But if we were to grant him immunity from telling the truth, of what value, would his testimony be?
So the next step here is that the Department of Justice will weigh whether or not it has enough evidence to move forward with a criminal prosecution. We should point out, Christine, in the past, the Department of Justice has received criminal referrals that have been voted on by an entire body here in Congress, either the House or the Senate, and decided they didn't have enough evidence. So this is in the Department of Justice's hands. Whether or not they move forward remains an open question.
Hey, Ryan, I also want to ask you about President Trump's Attorney General nominee, Todd Blanche. The Senate expected to move forward with his confirmation tomorrow, Friday, setting up for a final vote Saturday. Does he have the votes?
It looks like he does, but I'll add an important caveat that there are two senators right now that have not definitively said that they will vote yes, and that is Bill Cassidy of Louisiana and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. Both of them have shown a willingness to buck President Trump on a series of issues. Cassidy in particular, after President Trump backed his primary opponent and he lost his primary, so he essentially has nothing to lose. Both of them met last night with Todd Blanche in a very hastily called meeting, you would assume, to try and address some of the concerns they have about his voting record and what type of attorney general he will be. Neither have signaled what came out of that meeting or how they intend to vote. Keep in mind, though, Christine, he would have to lose both Murkowski and Cassidy, in addition to the fact that Susan Collins of Maine has already said that she will vote no. If he were to fail in that confirmation effort, that still seems unlikely, but it is still a live ball because they have not said how they plan to vote. Christine?
All right, Ryan Nobles. Thanks, Ryan. All right, the political pressure on Congressman Max Miller is mounting, but so far it hasn't changed his plans. A key deadline has now passed for Republicans to more easily replace the embattled Ohio Republican on the ballot this November. Miller is vowing to stay in the race despite multiple domestic abuse allegations that he denies and calls for multiple Senate Republicans to resign. NBC Chief Justice and National Affairs correspondent Kelly O'Donnell joins us now. Kelly, the calls for Congressman Miller to resign and end his campaign aren't just coming from his former father-in-law and Senator Bernie Moreno. Several Republican senators have publicly urged him to step aside. How significant is that pressure coming from within his own party?
There is significant pressure, and it is a message to Max Miller, but he does have the ability to stay in the race at this point because he has won his primary. He is a sitting congressman, and he says he wants to continue to fight for a third term. Now, we have to step back here and remember these are real people and a real family that's going through difficult turmoil, and there is a political aspect to this. And both things are difficult. In the terrain of dealing with the family matters, Max Miller says he has not been responsible for domestic abuse against his ex-wife. He contests that. At the same time, she has gone to the police and made reports alleging that it was an abusive relationship, and there's ongoing tension over custody issues that relate to their toddler girl, their daughter. So the pressure politically takes on some other dimensions. You have a tight race here for control of the House overall. This particular district, Ohio 7, does lean Republican, and that's part of why Miller says that he believes he's got a strong showing here, and he also says he's been a good legislator. There's also the controversy that goes with it and the potential impact on voters. Will they pull back from his race, and could that affect others on the ballot? There's a tight race for governor. There is also a Senate race in which that's hotly contested between the incumbent Republican and a former U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown, a Democrat. And so that pressure is real. The question will be, does it affect Miller before the party would have any option to put a new name forward?
Yeah, and so how much of an opening does that create for his opponent, the Democrat Brian Poindexter?
It's hard for me to assess that. Brian Poindexter doesn't have a political past. He's an iron worker, a Democrat saying he's not running about Max Miller. He's running for the people of his district in Ohio. Hard to know how that will play out. Certainly the negative attention around Miller is a factor. What it does for voters is an open question. Does it cause them to not want to be interested in this race? Does it cause them to want to vote against or for in a particular way? That's not something that I can get into the minds of voters on, but we've seen these kinds of dynamics before, and it can have an effect that goes beyond just one race to spill into how voters approach the ballot for other races down through the whole list of things they can vote for. And that's part of why the party is concerned, in addition to the reputational issues this raises. Christine?
All right, Kelly O'Donnell, thank you for that. Now to the war with Iran and the big wait to see if the Strait of Hormuz will reopen. Both the United States and Iran are signaling a deal is close, but who has control of the strait remains a sticking point. Joining us now, NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons for us in Doha. The President, Keir, says progress has been made toward a deal, but communications with the other side have been challenging, to say the least. Explain that for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think part of it is the question of what is the other side, because J.D. Vance, the vice president, has said again that he thinks that the Iranian leadership is divided. Certainly, there is a political part to the Iranian regime. There is a military part, very powerful. So there's the supreme leader. So you're not necessarily clear who you're talking to is what President Trump has, the way President Trump has described it. I think there's that aspect of it. That being said, Iran has spoken with one voice quite often in all of this. There's that piece. And then the other aspect is just that determination of the Iranians, as I mentioned, with that one voice to, for example, maintain that they should have a say over the Strait of Hormuz, kind of oversee it, have control, if you like. So this agreement is being negotiated between Oman and Iran on either side of the Strait of Hormuz, with countries like Qatar in the background and then the US. But it is a very narrow thing. I mean, this isn't the big summits with J.D. Vance flying in and that we saw in Pakistan or in Switzerland. This is telephone diplomacy, just trying to figure out one little piece of it, how to get the Strait of Hormuz working again.
That Strait of Hormuz, one little piece, but it is big new leverage that Iran didn't have before, honestly, and might not want to easily give up.
Yeah, that's true. And you're going to see America's allies and partners in the region try and find ways to distill that, to water down that leverage. So, for example, with pipelines sending oil to other coasts and all kinds of other ways in which they will try to do that. And I think that makes this point, Christine, which is that when you look at your phone at some point, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, and you see a deal has been done, don't think it's over. It's just one step. It's maybe the beginning of the process, really, because there's so much more to negotiate. The nuclear side, President Trump says, for example, and you're going to see an effort on both sides to try and use that leverage or gain leverage. This has changed everything, this war, and I think we're going to see that in the months ahead.
All right, Keir Simmons, so glad you're there reporting it out for us. Thank you. All right, high alert in Washington state, where a new fourth wildfire is sparking more evacuation orders. Already nearly 67,000 people have been forced to evacuate as these flames spread across Spokane. Officials are warning that number could climb as more than 800 structures, many of them homes, have been reduced to ash. Right now, 1,500 firefighters from 24 states are teaming up to battle these flames, working these grueling 16-hour shifts. They are bracing for renewed risk this weekend as winds pick up and temperatures climb to the high 90s. Joining us now, NBC News national correspondent Morgan Chesky. Morgan, have firefighters managed to get a handle on this new fourth fire?
There is some good news here, Christine, and that is they don't consider that fourth fire to be an active threat. They do believe they have that one under control. And as for the major three that make up this Spokane fire complex, they tell me that they've cut fire line around all of them. And now it's more or less a war of attrition as they slowly but surely kind of work their way inwards to try to put out those hot spots and to try to get an official containment here sooner than later. As for when exactly that will be, nobody knows, particularly because of what you just mentioned, these changing weather conditions. We know that there is hotter weather expected here today, tomorrow as well. And with the return of potentially gusty winds on Saturday, it could make for a whole new front on this firefight that has been so devastating to this region.
Talk to us about the conditions. How much worse are they expected to become this weekend with these higher temperatures and stronger winds?
Well, I think the main mission here, Christine, because it is going to be significantly worse, is the fact that they're kind of racing to contain as much as they can while conditions are cooperating. When you have triple-digit temperatures, as we may have tomorrow and the day after that, combined with that wind, we're going to see conditions very similar to what we had last Saturday when this old Trails fire, which caused the devastation that we're standing in the middle of, took off. And was responsible for burning more than 8,000 acres and hundreds of homes. One witness told me that as he saw the fire kind of moving towards his neighborhood, he felt a gust of wind, and it was just looked as if someone had just poured gasoline all over the fire front as it continued to make its way uphill into another neighborhood. So certainly a sense of urgency here.
And later today, I know the suspected arsonist will be appearing in court to be arraigned. What are you expecting to come out of that hearing?
Aaron Farnacci is expected to enter a formal plea for that count of first-degree arson. We're going to hopefully learn more from investigators. As you mentioned, he was released from prison 6 years ago after pleading to a manslaughter charge back in 2010 for killing his own father in Arizona. One thing that we're trying to learn more from investigators on are these reported 2 instances where he encountered law enforcement for fire-related calls. That didn't result in an arrest. That didn't result in an arson charge. But that's certainly something that speaks to a troubling past here. Christine.
All right, Morgan Chesky, thank you so much, Morgan. Coming up, health officials sounding the alarm about another foodborne illness that's growing rapidly nationwide. We'll tell you what to look out for. Plus, the CDC has its first permanent leader in a year. What Dr. Erica Schwartz says she'll bring to that role. And later this hour, from the lottery to prediction markets to online gambling, it seems today everyone is looking to make a quick buck. But we'll have the real secret to making money, and it's not what you think. We'll get you current after the break. New concerns this morning over a second foodborne illness spreading across the country. A surge in salmonella cases is prompting another popular Mexican-style food chain to pull jalapeno peppers from its restaurants. The CDC is now tracking hundreds of cases and dozens of hospitalizations across 27 states. Joining us now, NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa. Maggie, let's start with the salmonella surge. What do folks need to know?
Yeah, I know we have to go peg by peg in this story because these headlines keep compounding. So basically what people need to know is that a lot's been done to try to rein in this outbreak. So specific to salmonella from jalapeno peppers, Qdoba has now pulled them from all locations across the country. This as a precaution, and compare that to Chipotle earlier this week doing the exact same thing. But in that case, it was because state health officials in Minnesota had traced the better part of 100 plus cases to people who had eaten at Chipotle. At the same time, the CDC is now investigating, and they traced the tainted batch to peppers grown in Sinaloa, Mexico, and distributed by Coast Citrus Distributors. They're based out of San Diego. That company not commenting at this time. But, Christine, suffice it to say, we have close to 350 cases nationwide. We definitely expect that number to go up. If for no other reason, this is how these work, more people find out about the outbreak, maybe they were sick days or weeks ago, they connect the dots, they come forward. So even with all these steps taken, this will likely continue to balloon like it has been.
And it's not just jalapenos. There's millions of cartons of eggs have also been recalled. What are you hearing about the egg recall?
Yeah, that's another layer in this. The CDC announcing that 1.5 million cartons of brown and white eggs produced at Texas farms and distributed by Midwest Poultry Services in Indiana. They've now been recalled. They're tracking 98 illnesses, 26 hospitalizations across 17 states. And we talked about this in the last hour. We should note, this is something the CDC knew about late last month. This has been kind of in the lexicon for the last couple of weeks or so. And so basically, suffice it to say, it's one that's been ongoing, but people are now paying more attention because these other outbreaks are so big and in some cases so severe that it's getting a little bit of oxygen there. But again, that recall has been issued as well.
Yeah, so bring us back to that cyclospora outbreak, the initial outbreak that got our attention. It has also spread. What's the latest there?
Yeah, this is a historically large outbreak, and you could argue the reason why the spotlight is so brightly on food safety. So this is the tainted lettuce outbreak, the explosive diarrhea outbreak, and a lot of that lettuce tied to Taco Bell. We are now at 10,000 confirmed cases, more than 10,000. Also 2 deaths, remember, in Michigan, in people that had pre-existing health conditions. I mean, so suffice it to say, this one continues to balloon as well, kind of that same dynamic that we talked about. But again, the CDC saying that restaurants that have pulled tainted products, their food is safe, but there are lingering concerns about bagged lettuce and bagged salads. So food safety experts advising people to keep avoiding those, buy whole heads of lettuce, remove the outside leaves, and just always thoroughly wash your produce with or without an outbreak on the horizon, Christine. But yeah, a lot of attention specifically because of that one.
All right, Maggie Vespa. Thanks, Maggie. The Senate has confirmed Dr. Erica Schwartz as the country's next CDC director. She's the first permanent head of the agency in a year. During her confirmation hearing last month, senators repeatedly asked if she would make her own decisions based on scientific evidence, particularly on vaccines. Republican Bill Cassidy, who himself is a doctor, asked her about that.
Well, you have the ability to say no to junk science and to say yes to that which has been firmly established and to stick up for what is actually right and true as opposed to that which is superstition and prejudice.
Chairman, I've always stood up for what is right and what is true, and I believe that I will continue to do that.
Joining us now, NBC News health reporter Aria Bendix. Aria, how closely aligned is Dr. Schwartz to Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. when it comes to these public health issues?
So that's the million-dollar question, Christine. I don't think Democratic senators really got a clear answer from her confirmation hearing, which is why the vast majority actually voted against her nomination yesterday. Schwartz has sort of masterfully towed the line between embracing Kennedy and embracing mainstream medicine. She was clear at her confirmation hearing that she thinks vaccines are safe and effective, but she sort of dodged questions about whether she would stand up to the health secretary if he asked her to resist science. So I think a lot of public health experts are treating her with cautious optimism at the moment and hoping that privately she'll be able to resist political interference in the CDC.
Her portfolio right now is bursting, and these are life-threatening, sustaining issues that she has to deal with. You have 2 parasite outbreaks, and you have measles cases in this country at the highest level in 35 years. So she's going to face significant challenges on day one at CDC, isn't she?
That's right. I mean, before we even get to her docket, the biggest challenge here is trust, because the CDC has had a high degree of turnover over the last year and a half. It's had its budget slashed. It's had employees fired, rehired, fired again. And then there was a shooting at its Atlanta headquarters last year. So morale is incredibly low. And I know employees there are really looking for a stable leader. But yes, of course, she's going to have many line items and public health crises to inherit. Salmonella and cyclospora, she'll have to get up to speed on those very quickly. And then measles, the other big one. How is she going to approach the growing number of cases? Is she going to maintain the status quo and sort of sit back silently, or really emphatically support the MMWR vaccine, maybe even bring back some vaccination campaigns that previous administrations saw?
All right, a lot on your beat to cover. Aria Bendix, thank you so much. Nice to see you. From Disney's deal with TikTok to tariff refunds, let's get you financially current this morning. A live look at the markets right now. The Dow Jones Industrial Average falling about 315 points there. New this morning, the number of Americans filing for unemployment benefits went up last week by nearly 200,000. Tomorrow, the latest jobs report will be released. We'll be covering that for you. Disney and TikTok are teaming up. Their new deal will allow TikTok users to make Disney-centric fan-created content to be shared in a new space called Verts on Disney+. The deal will pilot in the U.S. in the coming months. The Trump administration has refunded about $100 billion that they collected from the president's sweeping tariffs. Earlier this year, the Supreme Court struck down those tariffs, as you recall. Some $66 billion still need to be returned. After the break, treat yourself. Why some Americans are once again opting to shell out some cash for the little luxuries that make them happy. The popular gas station chain Buc-ee's is suing a small mini-mart in Ohio, why it's fueling national outrage. And caught green-handed, the leafy disguise caught on ring cam that has police rooting for answers. Yep, I went there. We have more current right after the break. From an attempted murder at sea to changes for the Triple Crown, let's get you current on the other headlines we're following today. In-N-Out Burger is paying tribute to an employee who was killed in a mass shooting while working in Idaho Saturday. The company took to their official Instagram account to honor Ashley Garraby, saying in part, "We will remember Ashley as a beloved friend and teammate whose dedication, pride, and compassion will never be forgotten." Garraby is one of the 3 people killed after a gunman opened fire near the restaurant before fatally shooting himself. A Florida man is accused of trying to kill a diver by cutting their air supply. According to an arrest report, the man was involved in an argument with another boat over the diving spot. The report alleged he then swam over to the breathing apparatus connected to a diver and turned it off before a boat operator pulled the victim to the surface. A spokesperson for the defendant denies these allegations. A first for the historic Triple Crown. Starting next year, the Preakness Stakes will be held 3 weeks after the Kentucky Derby. It will also shift from its normal Saturday date to a Sunday. The move is being made in part to get more horses that run in the Derby to run in the Preakness. And a live look in space where NASA astronauts are just minutes away from crossing the 3-hour mark of their 6.5-hour-long spacewalk at the International Space Station. The mission will help set the stage for some upgrades to the station and its power system. All right, online gambling is booming. Prediction markets are everywhere. You can bet on virtually anything. A big lottery jackpot always lands lots of headlines. And as we've just seen, a buzzy initial public offering can cause a frenzy. But what if I told you the best way to build real wealth is not to get rich quick, but to get rich slowly and quietly? Humor me. A little bit of money invested quietly and routinely over time is the surest way to grow it. Boring is better. Here are the key principles to understand. First, compound interest, basically the money on your money or interest on your interest, which makes your money grow faster over time. And the second, dollar cost averaging. It's a mouthful. It's essentially investing a fixed amount of money at regular intervals, regardless of whether the stock market is up or down. Here's another scenario to consider: compound returns. If you invested just $100 every month in the stock market, starting at age 20, the compound return on that investment would be around $1 million at retirement. If you started investing at age 30, it's less, $380,000. 40, $130,000. But still, it shows you $100 can turn into a lot of money. This all may sound wonky, but it will make you rich. Joining us now is Chief Consumer Finance Analyst at LendingTree, Matt Schultz. Okay, Matt, I know we are singing from the same choir book here. Many young people are putting off investing long term. Why should they be investing right now? And talk to us about how it's more accessible than many people think.
Yeah, they should be investing right now because the truth is that the biggest financial asset that anybody will ever have is time. So it's so important to start today, even if you think the amount that you can put in is just ridiculously small. It's okay. The more time you're in the market, the more time you can save, the better off you'll be. And you're right, it's never been easier to be able to access things like high yield savings accounts and brokerage accounts and those sorts of things. So there's really no excuse.
Let me show you this example from Fidelity. And there's a lot of good information, whether at Bank of America or Fidelity or Vanguard or any of these names. If you invest $500 a month starting at age 25, look at the huge return of nearly $1.5 million thanks to compound interest. I mean, this is just putting money, a little bit of money, $500 a month. You're right. Maybe people don't think they can do $500 a month if you're in your 20s. So do $50, do $100. What are some of the options people have just to get started?
Really, the best thing that they can do is take things out of their hands and automate things. So if they open up a brokerage account or a high yield savings account or whatever they choose, automating deposits into that account so you don't have to think about it is really the best thing to do. I mean, it's far more important to be consistent than it is to put lots and lots of money in up front. And that's so important because so many people get so daunted by the numbers that people tell them that they should be investing that they just throw up their hands and don't get started.
That's why I always say boring is better. And I do think the jargon around investing can sometimes be a gate. It can be like a gate to people. And so we really want to try here to explain how it works. Let's talk about interest rates at the moment right now. Mortgage rates are almost 7%, but credit card interest rates, oh my goodness, they're record highs in the 20%. For some young people, the first thing they have to do is get control of their debt.
Yeah, and the truth is that you have more power over interest rates than you think you do. And even though it looks like the Fed isn't going to ride to the rescue anytime terribly soon, and they may actually make things harder sooner, you don't have to wait for them to come to the rescue. LendingTree did a survey earlier this year where we found that 84% of people who asked for a lower interest rate on their credit card in the past year got one, and the average reduction was about 6 percentage points. It's a really big deal. And things like a 0% balance transfer card or a low interest personal loan can really, really help as well.
And I think it's really important, Matt, and we'll leave it here, but it's important for people to understand no matter what your age, you can be paying down debt and investing for retirement at the same time, and you should be, especially if you're in a 401k where your company is putting free money in to match. So, you can do both of those things, and I think people should be doing that. Matt Schultz, thank you so much. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone deserves a little treat to yourself moment here and there. We're talking about makeup, splurging on coffee, toys, movie tickets. And apparently in this economy, people are choosing to enjoy these little luxuries instead of making major purchases. Joining me now, my friend, NBC News business and economy reporter, Ali Canal. This isn't about not spending money. It's about, let's say, spending a little bit of money on something that makes you feel better about where you're not.
Yes, a smaller purchase for short-term pleasure versus, a larger purchase for maybe that long-term financial pain here. And when we look at some of the things that people are spending on, beauty is a big part of this trend. Obviously, it's called the lipstick effect. And we've heard from companies like L'Oreal who said that customers are spending on skincare, they're spending on fragrances, they're spending on makeup, trying to make themselves look better, feel better. Also, affordable experiences like going to the movies. AMC said
the month of May was actually the best performing month when it comes to attendance since 2019, which is pretty, and that's pre-Odyssey and pre-Spider-Man. So that just goes to show people want to go to the movies, and toys too. Adults actually accounted for 35% of toy industry growth during the first 4 months of the year. That's according to data from Circana. And interestingly, that was driven by collectibles, so trading cards, Legos. And then I know you and I differ on this, but people are spending on their little $5 latte. $8 cappuccino. I know.
I'm not going to shame you. I'm not going to shame you. I just think, for me, the $5 to $8 latte is not something I want to splurge on.
But guess what? I apparently I'm not alone, because Bank of America said spending at small and mid-sized coffee chains doubled year over year in June.
If it makes you efficient and good at your job, then it's an investment.
I
agree. I will agree with. Now,
we'll spin it.
There are some people, though, who are pulling back on things like vacations. They're pulling back on home remodels. Tell me where the bigger things that people are pulling back from.
Yeah, so 1 in 5 Americans are actually canceling their summer trips or postponing those trips due to higher costs. You talked about home renovations, even purchasing a home. Mortgage rates are at their highest level in around a year. Car purchases, those bigger ticket items, people are slowing down on committing to those types of expenses. Now, a big reason for that is there's just a lot of anxiety right now around the state of the economy. There's uncertainty when we look ahead to the future. Gas prices have ticked up due to the war. So that's all causing this angst.
All right, Allie Cannell, thank you so much. You can buy me a coffee later.
All right, sounds good.
But I'm not going to buy it.
I will.
Call it a battle between two beavers. The popular gas station Buc-ee's is sparking outrage online for suing a small corner store in Ohio over its beaver logo. It's not the first time Buc-ee's has made a trademark claim in court, but that mom-and-pop shop may have an unexpected ally, late-night comedian John Oliver. Joining us now from Miami is NBC's Jesse Kirsch with this very high-stakes lawsuit. What's going on with this suit and John Oliver's involvement in the previous lawsuit?
Yeah, so what we're looking at, Christine, is a big problem centered around a very little guy. For those who don't know, this is the mascot of Buc-ee's, a massive gas station chain that is wildly popular. But the company is saying that this brand's value is being threatened by a single store in Ohio, and that is drumming up controversy, a tale of two beavers, if you will, pitting a David against a Goliath.
When you hear the word Buc-ee's, you might think of rest stop heaven.
Brisket on board.
Fresh barbecue, seemingly endless snacks, and all kinds of merch featuring this buck-toothed beaver. But this morning, the wildly popular gas stations are fueling outrage, too.
It's time to boycott Buc-ee's.
This is ridiculous. When does this end?
In a new federal lawsuit, Buc-ee's accuses Beaver's Mini Mart in Beaver Creek, Ohio, of trademark infringement. The mega chain claiming the convenience store's use of a cartoon beaver with wide eyes and a smile is unauthorized and is likely to cause confusion among consumers.
As Ohioans, we don't play, okay?
Support for the store quickly going viral, with a burrito spot, a bakery, and a law firm joining in.
If you've been injured by a large corporation coming after a little guy, you need the beaver on your side.
These cookies, a fundraiser to help cover the Mini Mart's legal costs.
And I would argue, if you get confused between those two logos, that is an issue with you.
It all comes just days after comedian John Oliver mocked Buc-ee's and its multiple trademark lawsuits.
As one legal expert has said, the more you do this, the more you might run into somebody who has the means or the will to fight with you about it. And that is where we come in.
Oliver revealing a lineup of merch branded Buck Off. He says the proceeds will help battle hunger in the U.S. Legal experts say when a company wants to protect its brand, they can only go so far.
Buc-ee's does not and will never have the right to exclude everybody else from using cartoon beavers. The key is, are they similar enough in the same marketplace to cause a likelihood of confusion?
Regardless of the legal outcome, in the court of public opinion, this furry guy may have bit off more than he can chew.
And this is absolutely disgusting. How dare y'all?
So much circling around this little guy right here. Should note, we've reached out to both Buc-ee's and the owner of that mini mart for comments so far. We have not heard back. on this beaver beef. That's the term I am using, Christine. We'll see if we can get that trademarked. And I'll just say one other thing. We don't know how this case will move forward, but I have a sneaking suspicion that we'll be looking for any potential damning evidence. That's it. Last pun.
You win. You win.
I'm sorry,
but wait,
I had to.
The mom and pop shop at the town is called like Beaver Creek or something, right? That's the whole beaver.
It's literally in a city called Beaver Creek, Ohio. And according to the Cincinnati Enquirer, a newspaper in Ohio, there are multiple businesses that have beaver imagery. So the question in that community right now is, where does Buc-ee's go with this next?
All right. Jesse, thank you. All right, police in Georgia are asking for the public's help in identifying this this suspect. You can understand the mix-up here when you see the video. Take a look at the Ring camera footage. It shows a man hiding behind a handful of leafy branches inside a garage. The local sheriff's department says that's where he abandoned a stolen car. The tactic was pretty effective. That is, until the very end when the suspect looks up at the camera and realizes his face isn't completely covered. Investigators are asking anyone who recognizes the man behind the plant to come forward. All right, coming up, should popular GLP-1 weight loss drugs be covered after the weight comes off? We have a report on this hotly contested debate. And a Georgia woman is suing a healthcare company after she was misdiagnosed with cancer, told to get a hysterectomy, how the unnecessary surgery changed her life. We'll get you current after this. A woman in Georgia is dealing with the fallout of a stunning medical revelation that turned out to be false. She says she was misdiagnosed with an aggressive cancer after her lab work was mixed up with someone else's. But before the hospital noticed its mistake, she got a hysterectomy to try and fight the disease. Now she is suing the hospital system for negligence. Chase Howell from our affiliate in Atlanta has that story.
Cassandra Barksdale says this misdiagnosis wasn't just physically taxing after having to endure a full hysterectomy, but it also put her in a deep depression where she admits she even had suicidal thoughts.
I had to contact my kids to let them know that I have 5 years to live and I'm going to die because I have aggressive cancer.
Or that's what Cassandra Barksdale thought after she was diagnosed with endometrial uterine cancer in March 2025.
My sons, they went into a deep depression. It took a big hold over my family.
In May, Barksdale says she had her uterus, cervix, ovaries, fallopian tubes, and 4 lymph nodes removed. She was even told she'd need chemo.
Every day, it was like my days were shortened because of the aggressive cancer.
But in September, 4 months after her surgery, Barksdale says Kaiser Permanente would tell her it was all a big mistake.
We've got computers, we've got science, we've got AI. You know, how the hell did this happen?
Roderick Edmond is Barksdale's attorney. He says his client's lab results were mixed up with somebody else's, and that's how this mess happened.
We will find out where the mishap occurred, how the mishandling occurred, how it wound up that somebody else's tissue wound up being labeled with Miss Barksdale's name.
Now they're hoping this lawsuit will prevent something like this from happening to someone else. And in a statement from Kaiser Permanente, a spokesperson wrote in part, Miss Barksdale should not have experienced this. We have highly trained staff and very thorough processes in place to prevent errors like this from taking place. After this occurred last year, we took immediate steps to ensure it could not happen again. Now, what about the person who actually had cancer? Well, according to Mr. Edmond, we may never know because of HIPAA, which protects the privacy of a patient's health information. Outside of Kaiser Permanente Southwood Medical Center, Chase Howell, NBC News.
What a story. All right, now to our series, Cost of Denial. Millions of Americans are on GLP-1 drugs, but there's a growing debate in the insurance industry about whether to cover those drugs once people have lost the weight. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz reports.
It's improved my sleep, it's improved my energy.
For Sacramento Sheriff's Deputy William Meehan, the GLP-1 drug Zepbound changed just about everything. His sleep apnea is gone, and he's down from 250 pounds to 170.
My appetite just got to a level where I stopped thinking about food all the time, and I could just live normally.
But now William is caught up in the insurance industry's debate over whether and when to cover weight loss drugs. When he recently went to renew his prescription, he was told this.
You are denied because your current BMI is under 30. To be on this medication, your BMI has to be greater than 30.
Essentially, Williams' insurer, Sutter Health, which initially covered the Zepbound for sleep apnea, told him he no longer qualified because he'd lost so much weight, his body mass index was now too low.
30% BMI is around 200 pounds for me.
You feel like you're being encouraged to gain weight right now?
I do. By the way I interpret it is that Sutter Health wants me to be 200 pounds to stay on this medication, and I don't think that's anyone's recommendation.
It's something many people on GLP-1s are now facing when it comes to renewal.
It's a real challenge right now to keep the drug for maintenance. Yes.
Professor Lisa Kroon runs the Medication Outcomes Center at UC San Francisco. She believes insurers should treat GLP-1s like maintenance drugs, the way they do blood pressure or cholesterol medications, but says the cost of these drugs, along with their exponential popularity, has led to a gray area in many health plans.
Can the insurance companies afford this, to pay for all of these people to have this drug for the rest of their lives? That's the challenge. Some health plans had to increase the BMI to cover them just because they were costing millions, tens of millions of dollars to a large health plan.
Her advice, be persistent. That's exactly what William did.
Another denial.
He appealed and appealed again and finally turned to NBC News. Within weeks of us reaching out to Sutter Health to ask about his case, William received a notice that he was now approved.
I think the only reason that I was approved for this is because the cost of denial and NBC reached out and asked, what's going on? Why isn't he being approved?
But Sutter Health told us the prior denials were due to an administrative submission error on the part of William's doctor, who also works for Sutter Health, saying that the initial request was denied as submitted under the obstructive sleep apnea indication, while the subsequent request was approved under the separate weight management indication. We also reached out to Williams' doctor for clarification, but received no response. Sutter added that no exception was made for William, but also noted that his approval should not be interpreted as a universal policy applying to all Sutter members.
There might be people who are like, well, you've lost the weight, you've changed your lifestyle. Why do you need the drug anymore? Is it just for vanity reasons?
I don't view it as for vanity reasons. I think that this genuinely has improved my health. I don't want to go back to being heavier and unhealthier.
Liz Kreutz, NBC News.
All right, after the break, a community kitchen that feeds hundreds of people a day is operating in honor of its founder. How her spirit lives on with every serving in our series, 50 States in 50 Days. And this, a fiddlers convention in Virginia is keeping sounds of the past alive, the beautiful music that keeps families coming back year after year. We have more current right after this. In our series, 50 States in 50 Days, we're introducing you to people making a difference in their communities. Today, we're in Washington State, where a community kitchen serves up thousands of meals, all thanks to one woman's legacy. Eric Wilkinson from our Seattle affiliate, KING, takes us inside.
All right, Eric, what do you want help with?
Larry Ringstead is a self-proclaimed jack of all trades.
I'm not great at anything, but I'm good at a lot of things.
In 2004, he and his naturally curly hair visited his aunt for a haircut. Beside him was Annie Fortnum. Larry overheard her talking about opening up a soup kitchen in her community.
And for the next 2 weeks, all I thought about was a soup kitchen.
Then maybe before they put it back, we can do some measuring and see what we...
Annie founded Annie's Community Kitchen at Edmonds Lutheran Church and ran it until she passed in 2022 at the age of 91. During that time, she provided well over 100,000 meals to her community. Her Wednesday night suppers now providing 10,000 meals per year.
Haven't seen you in a long time.
At her side from the start, Larry has continued Annie's mission. Her spirit felt throughout this kitchen and beyond. A reminder of her fearlessness hangs in the kitchen. That's Larry giving Annie, then in her 80s, a ride on his Harley.
Annie wasn't afraid to do anything to do or ask for anything that she needed to make this function work.
Larry is the first to point out it's Annie's army of steadfast soldiers who really keep the place running.
I just try to encourage good things.
Among those good things, Larry's tradition of singing happy birthday to folks at the weekly gatherings.
You know, it's pretty touching for individuals that maybe live on the street. You know, and now you have 100 people singing happy birthday to you. You know, that don't happen in your lifetime no matter who you are.
And as Annie's Kitchen approaches its 23rd birthday, Larry simply wants to keep it cooking, hoping to groom a new generation to continue this community treasure born in a barber's chair.
We need some younger folks to step in. You know, and there's plenty of people out there. You get back more than you give. That's what I say.
I'm Eric Wilkinson for NBC News Now.
Eric from our affiliate in Seattle, thank you so much. All right, on the bright side, up in the mountains of Virginia, old-time music is as alive as ever. The Galax Fiddlers Convention draws families from across the country each year to play the sounds of the past together. Now in its 90th year, this gathering continues to inspire musicians old and new alike. Abby Coleman from our affiliate in Virginia has the story.
Yeah, buddy.
For 90 years, these sounds have brought people to Galax. Not just to hear old-time music, but to keep it alive.
It's obvious. Here it is. It's like music all day, all night. It's wonderful.
This is Barbara Scott's 32nd year at the convention. Now, Barbara is sharing tunes with a new generation of musicians.
I like to see the fact that these young kids are bringing this music up and that they're really sincere about it. You know, it means a lot to them.
One of those musicians is River Brown. She's been making the trip from Delaware with her mom, Ellie, since she was a toddler.
She was listening to the music even before she could play it.
I really love jamming and performing and just the Galax vibe.
These chairs may be empty now, but don't let that fool you. Each one of them is saving a seat. Now, people set these chairs out days ago, hoping to have the perfect view when the music starts. But some of the most memorable moments aren't from a chair. They happen here, where generations become bandmates.
You can come in here and start hearing stuff that's hundreds of years old, played by somebody who's 13.
That's exactly what keeps Alexander and Benjamin Ferranti coming back.
Not always easy to play music, but it's fun, and that's why we do it.
And for River, keeping this music alive means making sure it doesn't stop with her.
It's fun to just keep the music alive in the world. It's ancient. I bet if I have kids, I might pass it down to them.
What a great story. Our thanks to Abby Coleman from our affiliate in Virginia. That's it for us this hour. We're grateful you joined us this morning. NBC News Daily picks up after a very quick fiddly music break.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.